How to describe Otello? He's a guy who's different than everybody else, and so he has this insecurity inside of him, and I think that's what feeds the whole story. If it wasn't for that little inkling of personal judgment and otherness, he might not assume that his wife, who he loves and who loves him, is cheating on him, even though Iago is trying to intelligently coerce him. Otello develops quite a bit throughout the opera. I think, the first time you see him, he's a hero and he just won. And I think, everybody's celebrating him in this amazing way, but he's also somebody who's fighting people who look a little bit like him. But as he develops through the story, when he's dealing with Desdemona, at first it's just this beautiful, beautiful romance. He's a little bit older than her, and he looks at her as something really sweet and loving. And then when all that starts to develop with Iago, who he doesn't really trust Iago even beforehand. Iago's always been a little bit of this personality who, he'll try to make things work in his own way. And so for Otello, that's really the crux of the story. I mean, Desdemona is a casualty in the story of Iago. And Iago is the reason that he doesn't understand love. There's so many musical moments that represent this character. I mean, everybody in the world has heard Esultate, the opening scene for Otello. Everybody's always listening to the greatest tenors ever who have done it before. And but the most beautiful duet I think I've ever heard or been able to sing is Già nella notte in the first act. I don't think there's a more beautiful duet in opera for tenor and soprano. Yeah, I think as a role, there's two sides, right? You have the singing and the acting. And the problem is if you get angry too much when you're singing, you can use that in a bad way. You have to be really, really smart. You have to be really intelligent about the motivation of each sentence and why you're saying it. In this production specifically, I have snap moments of severe aggression. And just keeping up with the tempo and breathing right. I think challenges mostly it's Act 2. I think Act 2 is the longest scene that Otello is on stage for. He doesn't have any time to rest. Reading the Shakespeare is really important because Boito used direct quotes from Shakespeare at times, even in Italian, but translated, using the structure of the sentences that Shakespeare used. So I feel like I said, I feel like I'm working with three geniuses creating this role: Shakespeare, Boito, and Verdi, of course, with the music. The music is so much more complex. The use of text is so much more complex, probably because of Boito, because he was also a composer. And just the use of Shakespeare is incredible. So this whole thing is bigger than our lives outside of the theater. This is something really special.